Okay, so one of the most common questions on my 1-year piano progress video is how I learned to read music so fast. And just to get this out of the way, I do not think I am some kind of prodigy when it comes to learning to read music. Any piece I'm playing in that video is one that I'd already practiced a bunch of times, and I think it's probably fair to say that once you've practiced the piece more than like 2 times going through the music, you're not so much reading it fresh as remembering stuff that you've already practiced. But I do think that some of the things I know about learning and practice from working on other skills helped me out when it came to reading music, and so in this video I'm going to talk about what helped me out the most. Bookmarks in the description if you want to hop around, otherwise let's just jump in. Make it simple. Now this probably seems obvious, but I do think that a lot of people want to jump straight into learning music using the pieces that they ultimately want to play rather than ones that are at their level. So I definitely made this mistake with Für Elise, which has quite a lot of like intermediate tricky stuff like grace notes and slurs and turns in it. And that definitely confused me when I was first starting out. Even playing music with higher ledger lines, so that's the stuff that's outside the usual stave, is quite confusing when you first do it. And so what I really recommend is starting out with pieces that have simple rhythms and notes that stay in the usual stave, and then kind of adding 1 or 2 new things at a time as you get comfortable. It's like learning to read when you're a kid. You don't start out with really long words and complex sentence structures. You start out with simple stuff and then move on when you're ready. Practice stuff you don't know. So to make sure you're actually reading and not just kind of recreating something that you already know the general rhythm and shape of, it's important to play music that you've never actually heard before. And what I recommend for that is getting a load of really cheap sheet music, or the kind of stuff that's copyright lapsed and available online, like Czerny's or Schaefer's. I will put links in the description, and just playing like a couple of pieces from that every day. It really works if you've got a resource for kind of checking your work after you're finished, so try and pick one that you can find like a YouTube channel where somebody else has already played through all the pieces perfectly. And yeah, just play 1 or 2 pieces a day. But also play stuff you like. So I've seen other people recommend getting like a big book of Baroque arrangements to play through or whatever, and I'm not hating, but I think there's definitely a lot of value in practicing the kind of music that you would eventually like to be able to play, even if you're just working on simplified versions of it. I grabbed a bunch of cheap versions of like pop songs and cinema themes that I really liked, and it's really super motivating to be able to pick through one of those like relatively quickly, like be able to pick it up in about half an hour and then work on it for the rest of the week if you really want to polish it up. And then that has the added benefit of teaching you the kind of note patterns and rhythms that you're likely to see in more complex arrangements of those pieces and ones like them when you get into more complex stuff. Learn your chords and inversions. So a big thing that sets piano apart from other instruments is that you can learn to read intervallically. And what that basically means is that you're looking at notes on the stave and going, okay, so those are like 5 intervals apart. That means that they're 5 notes apart on the keyboard. In my experience, you just sort of naturally get the hang of this, but what really helps at the start is learning what a basic chord and its 2 inversions look like, so that when it comes up, instead of kind of looking at all the individual notes and having to read those, you can just kind of look at it and go, okay, so that's a C chord first inversion, or whatever. It feels like a lot of extra effort at the time, but it will save you tons of heartache in the long run. Chords also really help you recognize patterns in stuff like the Alberti bass when it comes up, which is a lot easier than just reading everything from scratch for the first time. Also learn your scales. And I know everyone says learn your scales, but it really is helpful for a whole bunch of reasons. And with reading, what it does especially is ingrains the habit of hitting the right notes, the right sharps and flats for the key that you're in. You have to do it. And once you're a couple of months in, you might as well start practicing arpeggios as well, because a lot of cool pieces use them and it's really helpful to be on top of them. Embrace the megastave. I've saved this for close to last, but this is a big one. Something a lot of teaching resources don't address is how exactly you're supposed to read 2 staves at once. And they just kind of leave you to get the hang of that on your own. I started out doing what I think a lot of people do, which is to try and kind of flip from one stave to the other, kind of looking quickly from one to the other. And a piece of advice that really helped me out when I found it was to kind of think of both staves as one enormous stave and just get used to seeing the whole thing. You end up with your vision kind of focused on a place between the 2 staves, and your peripheral vision takes in what's on both, and you are ultimately trying to read them both at once. Again, this is going to feel impossible when you first start out, and all I can tell you is to keep at it and have faith that if you stick with it, you will get it. Everything I've mentioned already helps make this process easier, but ultimately you just have to commit to it and do it. And then do a little bit every day. I've mentioned this in a bunch of different videos about a bunch of different things, but realistically for almost any skill, short daily practice sessions beat big one-off once a week efforts in almost anything. Commit just 5 or 10 minutes of your daily practice to reading, it'll absolutely fly by and the results will compound over time. If you're only practicing a couple of times a week and the rest of the time you're practicing pieces where you already kind of know the notes, you're going to feel like you're back to square one when you go back to actually reading. Practice a little bit every day. Watch the gains compound. You will be surprised by how fast you progress. Again, I am not an expert in reading music. I am not a piano teacher. This is the stuff that helped for me. I'm still not amazing at sight reading. I am trying to get better. I practice it as much as I can. I should practice it more. I would love to one day be one of those guys who can just sit down in front of a piece of music and just rattle through it first time. I don't know if I'll ever get there, but I'm certainly trying my best. You should do the same. Go practice.